Syrian state media and an activist group reported Wednesday that ISIS militants beheaded one of Syria's most prominent antiquities scholars, Khaled Al-Assad, in the ancient town of Palmyra, then strapped his body from one of the town's Roman columns. The killing of 81-year-old Al-Assad was the latest atrocity perpetrated by the militant group, which has captured a third of both Syria and Iraq. Since ISIS overran Palmyra in May, there have been fears the extremists, who have destroyed famed archaeological sites in Iraq, would demolish its 2,000-year-old Roman-era city at the town's edge, one of the Mideast's most spectacular archaeological sites.
ISIS video shows some of the reported hundreds of murders committed near ancient Syrian town of Palmyra. Okay, so the good news is that some leader of the fanatical death cult ISIS decided the ancient Roman ruins at Palmyra should not be destroyed. The bad news is that while they showed a tiny bit of respect for the archaeological history of the region, the human beings currently living there are receiving no such respect. Some reports claim up to 400 people, including men, women, and children, were butchered as ISIS took control of Palmyra around May 21st. Accounts describe bodies lined along the roads and other barbarisms we've come to expect from these perverted, bloodthirsty butchers. Civilians who were happy to at least pretend to be ISIS supporters were spared, but for any captured Syrian soldiers, their fate was sealed the moment they were taken prisoner. In an almost 10-minute-long video allegedly released by ISIS, we get the usual music coupled with images of the so-called Islamic State's latest triumphs, and as always, the video features lots of gory images of victims all slaughtered in the name of their twisted ideology. But the highlight of the video features a group of what appears to be teenage boys who lead a group of 25 Syrian soldiers, all of whom appear to have been beaten, onto the stage of an ancient Roman amphitheater. Then, in front of an audience that includes young children, the soldiers are shot in the back of the head by their teenage executioners. Who would have thought that just a few years ago, instead of terrified young men awaiting a bullet to the back of their head, young ballerinas gracefully danced on this same ancient stage?
Leave an insightful comment on TomoNews.net and you could win up to $500 every month.
Now, to discuss in detail the situation in Syria, we're joined now by Daniel McAdams. He's the Executive Director of the Ron Paul Peace Institute. Thanks very much for coming onto the programme this evening. What do you make of what's been said? The White House has approved strikes in support of the Syrian rebels, and now the US is calling Assad the main evil in Syria. Do you think this is sort of laying the ground for a future attack by America on the Syrian government?
Well, clearly it's an escalation. The indications are all there. But I'll tell you what is the root of all evil in the region, and that is U.S. interventionism. It's not to say the U.S. is the root, but the interventionist impulse. Everywhere the interventionists have struck in the region, it has left a disaster in its wake. Look at Libya now. How can they objectively say that they left it a better place? Look at Iraq is a mess. Syria is a mess. They can say whatever they'd like, but the fact of the matter is there was no ISIS in Syria before the U.S. decided on regime change, like there was no Al-Qaeda in Iraq before the U.S. invaded. But you do not need to be a supporter of Assad to recognize that if the U.S. strikes the Syrian military and knocks them out of Damascus, ISIS will soon raise their flag over Damascus. And nobody objectively, even if you can't stand Assad, nobody objectively would say that that is a better result.
Do you think that any blame should go to Assad at all, though, over the creation of ISIS?
I don't know. All I know is that Syria faced an insurgency. That insurgency limited the ability of the Syrian security forces to control the country. The U.S. was behind that insurgency. Therefore, they bear responsibility for the, quote, lawlessness that they are now condemning. So you create lawlessness, and then you say that the leader has lost his legitimacy because he can't control the very lawlessness that you created. It just seems absolutely absurd.
Do you fear that Turkey could get more drawn into this conflict? Because it's now accepted that it will allow the US to use its air bases to conduct strikes. Where do you think this will lead now in terms of Turkey's role?
Well, Turkey is already more involved. They're bombing the Kurds, which have been the boots on the ground against ISIS all along. You know, Turkey for 3 or 4 years has turned a blind eye to jihadists crossing back and forth across its borders because It has supported regime change. It has not changed its tune at all. It still believes Assad must go. But now they're attacking U.S. allies. I think it's also very important that the U.S. is looking for a backdoor UN Security Council resolution under the guise of searching and researching the uses of chemical weapons in Syria. The Russians thus far have been cooperating with the U.S. in this, but they've been slightly wary because this could produce what the U.S. needs, which is some kind of a fig leaf for a coming U.S. invasion. The Russians were fooled on the Libya UN Security Council resolution. The question remains, will they be fooled again on this one?
Do you think there'd be much appetite, just from the American public, for example, for something like that to happen?
For the Security Council resolution, or for the U.S.
No, public opinion in support of more American involvement and boots on the ground in Syria?
Well, the Americans have been terrorized for at least a year now that ISIS is the worst thing to ever happen. If we don't fight them, they'll be coming under our beds and attacking us. So the propaganda has already been laid. It looks like the U.S. has now refocused its propaganda against Assad. Sadly enough, propaganda does work. It's worked throughout history. It stirs up the masses and gives them a taste for war.
Okay, Daniel, good to talk to you. We have to leave it there, though. We've run out of time. That was Daniel McAdams from the Ron Paul Institute. Thank you.